the most complex things you can do in book formatting when it comes to nonfiction books are tables. And if you do ever start doing a bunch of nonfiction books that have a lot of tables, be sure to charge accordingly. And this is why on my website, I do not have any pricing for nonfiction books because nonfiction books are all different. You know, your novels typically all words, maybe some of them have a few pictures, captions for the pictures. But for the most part, it's just straight text. You know, occasionally you'll have a block quote or a text conversation, but they're all pretty easy. But when it comes to nonfiction books, they are not all the same. You can have a nonfiction book that's a memoir that may have a couple of heading levels, some pictures with captions. That would be pretty easy, and maybe some pull quotes. That would be pretty easy. But other books that may have a lot of special formatting, such as a bunch of tables, a bunch of images, and things of that nature, you need to really think about charging differently for those. It's not a one size fits all when it comes to tables. When it comes to nonfiction books, especially when there's tables involved. And honestly, starting out, if you are doing nonfiction books for people, I'd recommend starting out small. And if a person comes to you with a really complex one, although it's a great learning experience, my best advice is to overcharge. And I've done this many times because I have had nonfiction books just blow up on me. I just haven't done the ebook for one of the ones that I've been working on, and it was actually referred to me from another designer who had already charged a base amount, and I agreed to this amount before even looking at the document, which was a big mistake, because if you take the time spent on this document on top of all the changes that the author had, you could probably say I'm probably getting paid $5 an hour on this job. So you want to avoid those situations. So if you are looking to do formatting, I would recommend maybe not doing nonfiction in the beginning until you have become comfortable with it, and then maybe you can move into the memoir formatting, and leaving those more complex jobs for other people. However, this video is going to be about that complex formatting and tables especially. Tables are very special, and this particular book has a lot of tables. And one of the biggest tables in the book is this one right here, and it took me a couple of hours to actually format because of all the little special nuances that he had within this table. So I'm going to zoom in just so you can see. He had some letters that were bold, some letters that were set in italics, some letters that were superscript, and they were not actually done in the Word document very well. So I basically had to reformat the whole entire table. And on top of that, I needed to format it so it would fit within the page size of the book. So originally we had set it up to 6x9, and I recommended we go up to, what did we go up to? 7¼ by 9¼ to give us more room for these tables. You know, you got to think an author, when they're writing the book, they're typically writing on a letter size paper, so they're doing 8.5 by 11, and so they don't think about what happens when this book is downsized into a 6x9 or smaller. So luckily we talked him into a larger document. Otherwise, this font on this table would be so minuscule. Now, for this particular table, I actually did this in a separate InDesign file, and I actually have that InDesign file placed in this InDesign file. So I'll do that for really complex tables. So that's something to note, that if you do a book with a really complex table, that would be an option for you. But for the most part, the rest of the tables are not quite that complex. And if you use styles properly, they don't have to be all that time consuming. So the thing to know about styles for tables is that you are going to have a multitude of styles. A bunch of different types of styles. You're going to have your paragraph styles. You may need some character styles, and you're going to have cell styles and table styles. All right, so they're all different entities that help build one table. All right, so we're going to take a look at this really minute table. I haven't done a lot of styles yet in it, but I do have two. So I have a table header style set up for the table header row, and then I have the regular style set up for the table row. And then if we zoom in, you can see I have lines around, and then I have like a dashed line here. Now, with these particular styles, the table header, table row, and the paragraph styles, the boxes don't come with it, okay? These are totally different. These need to be set up as cell styles, all right? So we're going to have a cell style here, we're going to have a cell style here, and then we're going to have a cell style for the header row. All right, so what we're going to do to set up a cell style, we need to bring up the style sheets for the cell styles as well as the table styles. So to do that, go to Window, type in Tables, Window, Styles, go to Table Styles as well as Cell Styles. And if you find yourself doing a lot of nonfiction books where you are doing a lot of tables, be sure to add it to your workspace. I do have them on my workspace. All right, now, before we get started, let's look at how we insert a table. Now, if a table format was used in Word, InDesign brings it in as a table. One thing that we need to do is where that table comes in. So here is, let's see, this is a centered paragraph style. And then we go to where the table is, and we have another style. So I have a paragraph style set up called underscore table. And something to note, as well as images, we have to have our leading be set to auto. All right, so if I didn't have this set to auto and I just had it set to 12, half the table would go missing. It didn't in that case, but that's only because it's not too far off. So we want to make sure that whatever line our table is on, we have a paragraph style set up. Mine is called underscore table with an auto leading. All right, and then you can tell it to center, you can tell it to do space above and space below, whatever you want. All right, so now that you know that you need a paragraph style with underscore table, as I already mentioned, we have a paragraph style of the table header, and then we have table row. Now what we need to do is set up those cell styles. All right, so I am going to select this whole row and create a new cell style. So we're going to go to New Cell Style, and it's not based on anything. We don't need to set up a shortcut, but I do want to tell it to use the table header as the paragraph style within it, okay? Cell insets are these numbers up here. So I want to make sure to include those. Usually when you create cell styles, it pulls everything in that you already have, and I'm not quite sure why it didn't do that. So I definitely want to include those cell insets, and that's basically padding around the words so the words do not touch the lines. Okay, so you definitely want that padding built in. And if you notice, we have 556. We're going to leave it at the 625, 0.0625 instead of the 556. So I'm just going to leave it like this. Vertical alignment, I prefer to have mine align center. So what that means is that it is going to center from top to bottom. So it's not going to be pushed closer to the top margin or the bottom margin of the frame. So I am doing align center. Baseline, you don't need to worry about it because I don't think our table header styles are set to a baseline. We don't want them set to a baseline for this for tables. Otherwise, your tables would look too funny. And text rotation we do not need, and clip contents to cell, we don't necessarily want that. We don't have any graphics, so we don't need to worry about that. Strokes and fill, we definitely want a stroke around that cell. So if you notice, we have these blue lines here signify that every line around the cell is going to be a 0.5 point line. So you can change this depending on what weight you want to go with. It's going to be a straight solid line, and you'll see a bunch of other options for the line. The color, I am going to choose black, and the tint is going to be 100% because we don't want gray lines. And for anything else, you don't need to worry about it. Later on, we're going to talk about cell fill, but for this one, we don't want any cell fill. Diagonal lines, we will probably not talk about, but this is where you could tell it to add hash marks just for texture to signify different types of information in a cell. This is something that you can do in Excel as well. I never do this, so I wouldn't worry about it unless you have a client who wants a really detailed table with different types of markings on it to signify something, some sort of guide. But then you would also need a kind of a key to show what each different like hash mark means. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to call this header cell, and I am going to click on OK. And then I'm going to make sure that that whole line is assigned to the header cell. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to create a couple of different paragraph styles here. We are going to create just a simple cell style that is very similar to the one we created up here. So we're going to go to File, New Cell Style. We're going to do table. I'm just going to call this cell regular. Again, come up with your own naming convention. We're going to keep the cell insets the same. We're going to do the vertical justification to center. Now, something to note, some clients don't like it centered, which always annoys me. Some clients want it pushed towards the top. So in these cases, these particular cells right here are actually going to center this text within this frame. And some clients may not want that, so you may want to choose a line top. It is my preference to center them, so we're going to leave it at that unless a client tells us otherwise. All right, clipping, I need to play around with this to see what the significance of this is. I want InDesign to resize the table when the text doesn't fit, but it doesn't always do that, and I want to see if this has any effect on that. All right, graphics we don't need to worry about. Strokes and fill, we actually want a 0.5 black stroke solid, 100% on the tint. We don't want a gap color. Don't worry about overprint, and we do not need a cell fill. All right. Again, we don't need any diagonal lines, and I'm going to click on OK. Now we can go ahead and assign this one to cell regular and this one to cell regular. For these, we need something a little different. All right. So we are going to go ahead and choose the, I'm going to look at, make sure I have what I have here. All right, I have just a 3 and 2 dashed here. All right, so what we're going to do here is we are going to select this one. I'm going to go ahead and tell it to be a cell regular, but then we are going to create a new style based on it. So we're going to do new style, and you'll see it's going to be based on cell regular. And we need to have, and I need to go back and assign, hold on just a second, one thing I didn't do here for cell regular, I'm going to edit it. I need to assign that table row paragraph style. All right, so here we're going to do a new style. It's going to be based on cell regular. It's going to be a table row. I'm going to go ahead and preview it. The cell insert, see again, I don't know why it's not bringing this content in. I need to check something in my settings to see why it's doing that. It should automatically bring them in. So this is going to be called cell dash right. Okay, and that'll make sense in a minute. We're going to keep it aligned center, and we don't need anything else. We don't need any graphics, strokes, and cells. All right, so if you remember, we need this line, and this line to be the 0.5 black solid line. And then this line we want to be 0.5 black dashed 3 and 2 line. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to just click on this blue line here. That removes it from this style definition. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say we want a 0.5 line to be black, we want it solid, and we want the tint to be 100%. All right, so now what we're going to do is we don't want to fill. Now what we're going to do is we're going to deselect these 3 lines and then select this one, and we're going to say 0.5, the dashed 3 and 2, we want it to be black, and we want the tint to be 100%. All right, so there you have it. All right, we're going to click on OK, and then we are going to assign that style to this one and assign the style to this one. All right, did you see how that moved? Because we centered it. Now we're going to create another style, and it's going to be the opposite of the cell dash right. So we're going to tell it to be cell regular, and then we're going to go new style, and we're going to say cell dash left. And again, I don't understand why it's not bringing this detail in. Do that. We need to go back over here and say table row text. All right, we don't need a graphic. And again, we need to decheck. Actually, this is the opposite. So this line right here is going to be our dashed line. So we need to tell it 0.5 solid, black, and the tint is 100. All right, now we need to decheck these and select this one, which is going to be 0.5, the dash 32, black, and 100. All right, so click on OK, and then go ahead and assign the left to that one, and then assign the left to this one. All right, so now let's put this into, well, let's go back and do one more thing. We need to make a table style. All right, so we're going to go here and we're going to go new table style. And I'm just going to call this basic table. And it's not based on any table, so it's not based on any style. The header rows are going to be that header cell that we set up. And the footer rows we do not have. The body rows are going to be cell regular. All right. We are going to have to, in those cases where we have that dashed line, we're going to need to do some individual selection of those cells to get that dashed line. So we can't set that up in the table style. All right, so overall, this is the table border around the whole entire table. So if you, in fact, maybe want a more solid line, you can change that. So if you wanted like a 2-point line around it, you can make it darker. I prefer to keep them all the same. And then table spacing, this really doesn't matter in the InDesign document, but once you export this to an EPUB, this needs to be adjusted, okay? I don't know why it always brings in a negative number for space after, but that can really mess up your EPUB and have lines on top of each other. So while we're at it now, I recommend to go ahead and adjust these to whatever space before and after you want. So I just put a 2.0625. But again, remember that this table is actually on the table paragraph style, which also has this information. So this information is more key when you're doing the EPUB, but go ahead and set it up like this. All right, so now we don't need to put any information here because our cell styles are already saying what it needs to be. But let's say you had a table that you wanted one line white and then the next line gray, and you want them to alternate. You would do that on this screen. So that's really helpful. And the same thing with columns. If you wanted a gray column, then a white column, a gray column, or a white column, this is where you would do that. But right now we're going to leave it as the default, which is the 0.5 and the 0.5 line solid black line. All right. And then fills. Oh, I'm sorry. That was strokes. If you wanted strokes around, like if you wanted a bold separator in between them, that's where you do that. Fills is where you do that alternating gray and white pattern. So you have different options where you could do every other row, every second row, every third row, a custom row, every other column, every second column, etc., etc. So we are going to just leave that as none right now. And then click on OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell this to be a basic table. Now, you will notice that because I changed that style definition, that now I have extra space down below. And that's okay. I'm going to leave it at that because I don't need to make any room. I have plenty of room to drop lines. All right. So now that we've got those set up, let's talk about how we would use those in a table. All right. So this particular table, I'm going to pull up his Word document really quick. And when it comes to tables, people are very picky about them if they have them set up a certain way. So I typically wind up using what they did in their document and not do anything special. So you'll notice, let me go back to make sure he didn't have gray in this one. I may make these gray like he did in the first one because they're the same type of table. So we'll just know that he had gray here for these. But maybe what I'll recommend is that we do gray, white, gray, because I like to have some patterns. So this is kind of how we're going to format this one table based on what we already have. So let's try this. All right, select the whole thing, click on Basic Table, and you'll see that we have a bunch of overrides. Let's see if we can clear it. Tables can be really funny. Clear all overrides. Okay, so no, nothing came in the way it should. And this is one of the most frustrating things about building tables in InDesign. Sometimes it doesn't work the way you expect it. So what we're going to do is, even though we told it to be this table style, we need to go in and select each header row automatically. So I'm going to apply header style, and I'm going to see what clear attributes not defined by style do. All right, so in that situation, it actually brought in and changed these to our table header paragraph row, which is what we need. All right, so now down here, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to tell it to be a cell regular, clear attributes not defined by style, and it brought it in. All right, now it brought these in as bold, and I don't want these to be bold, only my header rows are bold. So we're going to come up here and take that character style off that was already assigned as bold. Then with tables, you can come here and just resize it, because I don't like to have all that white space. It's just not necessary. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to, all right, so this is cell regular. This is going to be a cell right. This is going to be cell left, cell right, and cell left. All right, so that brought in that dashed line, and that's how we have it. Now, if you don't want to set the shading in the table style, like if you're going to have a bunch of kind of different mixed tables that are going to have different shading built in, you don't need to worry about trying to put it into this into the styles. So for this particular one, for now, I'm just going to keep them as he has them in his sample book, in his manuscript. And I'm just going to make these fills the gray. So to do that, just select the ones that you want to be gray, and on the fill up here on your control panel, we're going to choose black. Oh, where did our text go? And then we're going to take the tint down to about 15%. So that makes it gray. Now, at this time, you could create a new header style that says header, and I'm going to go ahead and do this, header cell gray. Okay, I'm going to assign it, and then we're going to do cell dash right gray. And then we're going to do cell dash left gray. And then we're going to say cell right gray, cell left gray, and then this will be a new style called cell regular gray. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and make this uniform. So we're going to see if this takes. Oh, there we go, it did it. Cell right gray. And so you can see how this gets really complex and time consuming. This whole time I've been recording for almost 30 minutes now, and although some of it was an overview, I've still only formatted 2 tables. So you can see how time consuming tables are, but as we move along, I will be doing more videos on more complex table things, so be sure to stay tuned.